The Mississippi Senate has passed a bill to change the state flag, which contains a Confederate battle emblem. The bill passed yesterday in a vote of 37 to 14. It is the latest Confederate symbol rejected in the weeks following nationwide protests over racial injustice. Ole Miss football head coach Lane Kiffin and Mississippi State head coach Mike Leach were part of the group that pushed for the removal. The bill will now be sent to the governor's desk, who has said he will sign it.
All right, so Jennifer, Georgia actually has gone through this process of removing the Confederate flag from the state flag. And there is some really interesting perspective that I wanted to actually share from the state Senate around when they were actually considering removing the stars and bars. All right, here we go. We actually put the Confederate flag on our state flag back in 1956. That was nearly 100 years after the Civil War ended. The state Senate says it had basically gone away after the war until the late 40s. It was only used in places that honor Confederate soldiers. But our state introduced it when there was a huge push within the legislature to prevent integration. This was just 2 years before the Supreme Court decision Brown versus Board of Education. And here's what the state Senate said about that. Quote, when the battle flag was incorporated into the Georgia state flag, the state was in a desperate situation to preserve segregation. Resisting, avoiding, undermining, and circumventing integration was the 1956 General Assembly's primary objective. One of our representatives who voted against adding the Confederate flag later said, quote, there was only one reason for putting that flag on there. Like the gun rack in the back of a pickup truck, it telegraphs a message. So the legislature voted to remove the stars and bars from our state flag in 2001. Very interesting historical perspective, as Mississippi is now back in the headlines for something very similar.
Yeah, I certainly remember that growing up. This paper also says that Georgia and Mississippi incorporated the Confederate flag into their state flags under some very different circumstances. Mississippi adopted it in the 19th century, so the Senate argues it likely didn't have as much of a racist undertone as flags that were adopted after the 40s.